everything about physiology, everything about virology has literally and figuratively been discarded. It's been like flushed down the toilet. Nobody cares about it. We're pushing the world to the brink of war. And it's not war between nations. It's war between people that know the truth and aren't going to put up with this idiocy anymore.
The real battle is not the virus. And I really thought this was fascinating, especially coming from a man of medicine like you, because you've now seen through a lot of the science that's being thrown around, and you're seeing actually this other battle you're talking about, which is a battle for the narrative, the battle for the minds, and using fear and information as a tool to control an outcome.
They want to wipe it out so that there's no memory of this 50 years or 1,000 years in the future. But that ship has already sailed. The only way for them to do that, now to accomplish the task, to get rid of all historical perspective of what's happening, is to kill you and me and every other person that stood up and talked about this, and the people that may not have stood up and talked about it, but recognize how foolish this is.
They still think our government is always doing something in our best interest. They think the mainstream media tells the truth. They think all doctors make decisions that are based on the best science. They think pharmaceutical companies give us the best treatments for us. Unfortunately, it's just not true, and you have to be aware of that.
It's going to be a war within each nation, and you're going to have the opposition that's going to try to push this agenda, and those that are aware are going to refuse to be shuttled like cattle into the slaughterhouse.
When you're really living in true alignment, speaking the truth that's more powerful than you, more powerful than your ego and your legacy, it's almost like something else takes over and energizes you.
Brian, I mean, I don't know if you agree with me, but this is truly, despite all the wrong things that are happening and the idiocy that's happening, it's an incredible time to be alive, because history will remember this point as a critical turning point in mankind's existence on this planet.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is... This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Dr. Rashid Buttar, the American osteopathic physician and author with over 30 years experience in the medical fields. You are trained in general surgery and emergency medicine and served as brigade surgeon while operating in the U.S. Army. You have been consistently ranked as one of the top 50 doctors in the U.S. since 2003. Your first book, The 9 Steps to Keep the Doctor Away, became a Wall Street Journal, USA Today, and Amazon bestseller. Today is your third appearance on London Real, and we have much to talk about, including further lockdown measures looming in both of our countries and the erosion of our civil liberties that will continue until 2021. Dr. Buttar, welcome back to London Real.
Thank you for having me again, Brian.
Hey, it's great to have you here. So much to talk about. Before we get started, I just want to announce that we are streaming now on our Digital Freedom platform, which is a censorship-free, independent broadcasting system that is of the people, by the people, for the people, and available exclusively on our website at freedomplatform.tv. Can everyone watching us now please share this link via the sidebar to any and all of your social media channels? Let me repeat that. Can everyone watching please share this link now via the sidebar to all of your social media channels? This is important. Simply ask your friends and family to give us 15 minutes and then they can decide. Dr. Buttar, I pledge to you and everyone watching us that none of this conversation will be edited, censored, removed, or banned, and that anyone in the world can watch the full version of this episode free at freedomplatform.tv/Buttar. Thanks to the generous donations of over 39,000 people around the world, we affectionately call the London Real Army. For anybody wanting to become a founding member of the Digital Freedom Platform, you can visit freedomplatform.tv/give to donate and fight with us on the front lines to protect our human rights. Here at London Real, we've been a platform for free speech since 2011. And Dr. Buttar, super excited to have you here today. I was looking back on the dates where we had you on earlier this year. April 27th was your first appearance on the Digital Freedom Platform. Doctor, you were one of our first guests on this Digital Freedom Platform.
I think I was number one. Wasn't that the first one? You said you put me.
Yeah.
I think you put down, because it said Buttar 1. And I think you told me that I was like the test case before you brought David Icke on, because he was number 2.
Yeah, no, it's true. We were spinning up this platform because we had just been, massively censored by a lot of channels, YouTube, a lot of other social platforms. And the Digital Freedom Platform was our rebuttal to that censorship. And you were one of the first people on here, gave this thing a road test, and it went on to make history. I think we've had 40 or 50 incredible guests, from doctors like yourself to nurses to Nobel Prize winners, professors emeritus, 4-star generals, all have been on this thing. And obviously we did the big world premiere of the documentary film Plandemic 2. It was massive. And also you came back on May 21st and brought 100 doctors with us for this really epic live stream, kind of a groundbreaking idea to put all these doctors in one place live. And it was incredible to see the reactions they had to each other when they realized they weren't alone in some of the thoughts they had with what was going on. And first of all, before we get started, Doc, I just want to say that I appreciate you being so outspoken in the last 7 months. And people don't remember, back in March, back in April, back in May, very few people were coming forward and talking about these things. And when we did, we were being cut down and censored left and right by our major technology platforms and by our regulators here in the UK, mainstream media trying to turn us into things that we weren't. And yet you kept fighting for the truth. And the funny thing is much of what you said now, I see popping up in mainstream media. And it just always makes me shake my head, because literally we were fighting and ready to die for this message 6 months ago, when now it seems just to be chirped back. Sometimes I see things you said on the New York Times and it makes me chuckle. So first of all, thank you for standing up. We've both faced some serious censorship issues, and there's a lot to talk about today. Let me start by saying, how are you doing? How has this last 6 months been for you? It's been pretty crazy when I watch you.
Yeah, it's been crazy. All right. It's been very busy, excessively busy. And Brian, just as a point of correction, we had 166 doctors when we did that, you and I together with the doctors. And you had actually told me, just because I think it's important for your listeners to know, especially for the supporters of the London Real Army, since they've supported the Freedom Platform, that you said we can have as many doctors as we need. And I was like, that's fantastic. So if I remember correctly, 20 minutes before we wanted to make sure everybody was on, I tried to get on 20 minutes before and I couldn't get on. I contacted you on WhatsApp and said, Brian, I can't get on. And you said, what? And you guys started looking back, and you had 100 doctors already on 20 minutes before. And so you guys had to open up the system. And when you told me, go ahead and see now if you can get on, it was like 1 minute till 12. And I came on, and there was another 66 doctors came on, but my phone was getting blown up by doctors saying, I can't get on. So we would have had probably 250, 300 doctors had we had the ability, capacity. But I think Zoom defaults to 100, and you had to change your settings to get more than 100. And so we had 166 on there, and it was the entire time. So I just want to, difference between 100 and 166, well, it's 66, but it's not just 66, it's 66 doctors from all over the world. And so, and we know that there's over 8,780 some, almost 9,000 doctors that have contacted me directly or indirectly, because we have their information that they've sent to us, their phone numbers, their office numbers, this and that are extremely, extremely upset with what's been happening, are amazed at what's been happening, and realize that there is some buffoonery afoot. And I think there's probably, you could add a couple of zeros to the end of that number. There's probably 800,000 doctors, because there's no way that you can completely disassociate yourself from every fundamental aspect of science, of medicine, of how the body works. Everything about physiology, everything about virology has literally and figuratively been discarded. It's been like flushed down the toilet. Nobody cares about it. I mean, absurdities like, I don't need to say this to you. It's like preaching to the choir, but, maintain social distancing as you board the plane, and then you sit down 6 inches away from somebody that you don't know. Or wear your face mask walking into the restaurant, and then magically the virus knows that you are susceptible when you walk in there. But as soon as you sit down, it's not going to screw with you anymore, because you're sitting down now, so you can take your face mask off. And at some point, you have to ask yourself, are human beings really that stupid? And if they really are, then maybe it is time that the human species be purged, because this is just a new order of magnitude stupidity we're seeing. We're witnessing things that absolutely defy every aspect of logic. You've got children that understand this and know it's idiocy. I mean, children are pointing this out. So when you start having children point out things, it's just, I mean, we're pushing the world to the brink of war. And it's not war between nations. It's war between people that know the truth and aren't going to put up with this idiocy anymore, and those that are trying to perpetrate this lie. Because the whole thing is, they want to make sure, there's an old adage, he who controls the narrative dictates history. So they want to make sure, when I say they, I mean the opposition, they want to make sure that they wipe out all aspects of the counter discussion regarding this COVID nonsense. They want to wipe it out so that there's no memory of this 50 years or 1,000 years in the future. But that ship has already sailed. The only way for them to do that now, to accomplish a task, to get rid of all historical perspective of what's happening, is to kill you and me and every other person that stood up and talked about this, and the people that may not have stood up and talked about it, but recognize how foolish this is. They'd have to eliminate every one of us to be able to now control the narrative.
Well, you've said recently that the real battle is not the virus. And I really thought this was fascinating, especially coming from a man of medicine like you, because you've now seen through a lot of the science that's being thrown around, and you're seeing actually this other battle you're talking about, which is a battle for the narrative, the battle for the minds, and using fear and information as a tool to control an outcome. Am I getting that right when you talk about that real battle?
I completely am 100% in line with what you just said. That is exactly what I'm talking about. That is exactly what the issue is right now. There are memes now that are going around, Brian, that say, where a person walks into a doctor's office and says, "So doc, how long is this COVID-19 issue pandemic going to go on?" And the doctor responds, "Why are you asking me? I'm not a politician." And then, when you get to the point of having memes like this, then you know that the social awareness is well beyond 50%, that, people know what's going on. And I don't think I've come across, now maybe it's just because my energetic and my persona is one that I'm not allowing people that aren't aware coming into my energetic field, but there's a very important difference between stupidity and ignorance, right? Ignorance is curable. You and I both know that, because there are many people that are ignorant, but if they want to empower themselves with knowledge, they can cure that ignorance and become aware. They learn, they understand. And many of us are ignorant in many subject matters that we don't participate in or partake in on a regular basis. So that's okay. There's nothing wrong with ignorance. That's why we have, institutions of higher learning. That's why we have, courses and people take, and the internet where you can go in and search, although you got to be careful what you're learning from the internet. But regardless, there's ways of curing ignorance. Stupidity, on the other hand, is not curable. No matter how much knowledge you have, you cannot cure stupidity. And this is the point right now I think we're at. From a global society standpoint, it transcends geographical boundaries, religious doctrine, politics, ethics, everything. It comes down to those that are aware and those that simply stick their head in the sand and refuse to acknowledge the facts. And it's amazing to me that I've seen people on both sides of the political party become aware. And I know people that are highly intelligent that have continued to stick their head in the sand, to which I'm amazed, because I know that they're not unintelligent people, and yet they're stupid. And so intelligence has nothing to do with ignorance or stupidity. Intelligence is the raw cognitive ability to process information, but stupidity is a choice, right? I mean, that's what it's come down to. And I know that you didn't have me on London Real to talk about the difference between stupidity and ignorance, but it's almost like something we have to talk about, because cognitive dissonance at a certain point is going to define whether a group of people or species itself is going to ultimately survive or not. Because if you're faced with a bear that's charging you, and you have cognitive dissonance saying, "Oh no, that's just an image. No, that's just, the bear's not going to reach me. No, there's a glass. No, there's some kind of invisible sheet." What's going to happen? That bear is going to bear down on you, and he's going to maul you. At some point, you have to realize that my cognitive dissonance is not as important as survival. I need to pull my head out of my fourth point of contact, like we used to say in the military, and wake the hell up. Because if I don't, I'm not going to be around here to have that cognitive dissonance.
It's a great point that you make. And, you know, what we see is this information war out there that, you know, tries to compromise, you know, those people in the middle that are on the edge, like you said, between the ignorance and stupidity. And, you know, they throw out words and they try to demonize people with certain views to where you won't follow that. You know, one of the great words out there is anti-vaxxer. You're not an anti-vaxxer, are you? And again, you don't even have to go any further down that train of thought, because already you've got someone kind of having an emotional reaction and no longer a logical reaction. So you can't have much more of a train of thought. And so both, you know, all sides and people involved in this information war use these tactics, and it's incredible to watch. And, you know, one of the things about censorship, and I'd love to get into censorship because you've really felt it as well, and you've continued to stream on your social platforms with varying shocking degrees of shadow banning happening. But, you know, I'd love to talk to you because you're one of my fellow people that really experiences it on a mass scale basis. And so if people are listening for the first time, let me just say this. I've been broadcasting, just celebrated our 9th year of broadcasting last week on October 23rd. That's 1,000 conversations that I've had. I never had a single issue with censorship until April 3rd of this year, where all of a sudden I found out that my YouTube relationship, which was, again, 8.5 years long, 9,000 videos, probably made them millions of dollars in ad revenue, nearly 2 million subscribers, part of the YouTube Partner Program, been down to headquarters for palm pressing and lots of nice things to say to me in the past. They literally banned and deleted one of my episodes, the second largest YouTube live stream in the world that day, and started slowly chopping us down, censoring us. And so just want to say to folks, this is real. The worst thing is, doctor, is I've gotten so used to it that I don't even say this much anymore because I feel like a broken record. But a lot of people, when I mention this, I'll mention to taxi drivers and stuff, and I'll be like, yeah, we're censored. They're like, you're what? I'm like, yeah, it's real. We were thrown off LinkedIn. We were thrown off of Dropbox. We were shut down from PayPal. The list goes on and on. Shadow ban on Instagram like you were. Ad account shut down on Facebook. We were spending $30,000, $40,000 a month, shut down. And the list goes on and on. So I just want people to know censorship is real. They are shutting down messages. They can call it hate speech. They can call it whatever you want, but they really do shut down the flow of information. And again, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not trying to go down the rabbit hole and find out what's going on. But the truth is that certain narratives are suppressed. And that's just the honest truth. And I was curious if you could tell us what your experience was with that, because for the last 6 months, I've watched you and we've spoken about some of your censorship on YouTube and Instagram, and it's plainly shocking. But I'd love it if you could tell everyone, because you know you have a decent sized following too, and it'd be great for people to know the truth.
Well, you know, it's interesting that our mutual friend Patrick Bet-David had looked at my numbers as things were happening, and he told me, he said, "Man, at this rate, you're going to be at 3.5, 4 million people on your YouTube channel within the next 2 months, 3 months max." And about 10 weeks ago. About 2.5, almost 3. Actually, it's, you know, I've been talking about this, but it's actually 3 months ago because it was in July, August, September, October. Yeah, it was in July, 3 months ago. It's such a funny thing now. I was up to 413,000 subscribers on YouTube. And, you know, it was funny because up until that point, I would have these bursts of 20, 30,000 people in a day, and then I wouldn't have anything for like a week. And then I have another 20, 30,000 in a day, and then I'd have nothing. So this had been going on for a couple of weeks. So I'm at 413,000 and nothing happens for a couple of days. And then I have 84,000 new subscribers in less than a 72-hour period. I went from 413,000 to 497,000 in less than 3 days. So I thought, that's interesting. Somebody must have got to hit the block button. From that point on, 3 months ago till today, I haven't had one new subscriber on YouTube. So how do you go 84,000 people in less than 3 days and then have no new subscribers? In fact, I looked at my account yesterday. I haven't looked at it. We don't even post anything on there anymore, except for my live streams. And I think we'd actually dropped by 1,000. Instagram, same thing. We got up to 209,000. Not 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, not a single new person subscribed. And yet when I look at follows, I see hundreds, not tens or dozens, hundreds, if not thousands of people following me, new people that are following me that day, but my numbers don't change. Now, something happened about 4 days ago because I've jumped another 9,000 on Instagram. So it's the censorship aspect. Facebook, I've taken screenshots because Facebook has literally stated, I can't post on my own account. I can't advertise, not that we ever have. And I don't remember what else. There was like 3 things, red, warning things. I think Facebook is, anybody that's still using Facebook or thinks that Facebook is impartial is very, very misguided. So to me, social media channels, I don't even use that anymore. Our own private membership, the International Association for a Disease-Free World, we have almost 12,000 members worldwide now, which we had a private Facebook group. I was banned from that as of July. I can't even post in this. So we've taken everything off that platform. You are way, way ahead, Brian, of the curve by understanding and recognizing this issue with censorship. I mean, many of us have known about it, but to leave the social media channels and create something different, that was amazing foresight. And I have basically done the same thing. I still use the social media channels. They haven't banned me. They haven't like deleted my channels, but they've certainly, I think that maybe that would be too conspicuous if they ban me, because I've, my message has always been the same. I mean, for 25 years, you can go back and I've always been considered controversial, right? I mean, that's how they always were. Like 2020, when they interviewed me, I think they referred to me as a controversial doctor like 197 times in 23 minutes. And then of course the patients that we were talking to, they said, I don't know. All I know is I'm getting better. And so, whatever they spin, you said that censorship is real and that's what they're doing. The one thing is that you can't censor the truth. My dad said this a long time ago. He said, the truth will always become evident, whether it takes a week or it's 500 years, it will become evident. You cannot suppress the truth. Sooner or later, it's going to come out. And I think in today's modern world, we make bitch and complain about censorship, but think about this, and especially the social media channels. But because of social media and because of the internet, information can be transmitted literally in seconds anywhere in the world. And that's what's happened. People can become their own broadcast stations. And the modern day book burning of censoring videos is nothing different than what they did 500 years ago when they were burning books. And so I think people recognize that. And, I tell my followers that if you want to really see, with all the nonsense that's coming out in social media, if you really want to see what the truth is, look for fact checkers that they've fact checked something, and there you know that you're getting the truth. That's the easiest way. So it's a great filter. We should actually thank them and send them a thank you letter. Thank you for flagging this, because now I know this is something that I need to focus in on. It's a good way of determining where should I put my attention. If fact checkers have fact checked it, you need to look at it.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. But the sad truth is that so many people don't know how to push one layer beyond their social media reality. And I know a lot of people out there. I speak to people on the streets all the time. Like I said, taxi drivers, people like that. And a lot of them, they're still in this, they think Google's a search engine. They don't realize it's an agenda engine, which means YouTube's an agenda engine. And, you look at what's trending on YouTube. I mean, I do that as a joke every now and then. All it is funny, happy, goofy YouTubers, music videos, sports highlights. I mean, they're feeding you stuff just to keep you entertained. But what's really trending, they're hiding because they can't show it and it's censored. And the problem is that it's true, the truth will come out, but it's hard to get it out right now when the world is conditioned to where 99% of their internet is the social platforms. In India, when you get a mobile phone, I think when you buy one at the market, the internet is Facebook. It's like preloaded. And for a lot of people there, they know it as Facebook. That's the internet for them. And so, unfortunately, there's still this issue, and I've felt it. We got a strike from YouTube a couple weeks ago, and we got shut down for a week on YouTube. And that's happened to us again 3 or 4 months ago. And when we're not on YouTube for a week, I feel it, because with a shadow ban on Instagram, which means they're throttling everything we do, it's hard to get a chunk of people to hear about something quickly. It just is. And so it's still real, unfortunately. I mean, luckily, we've got the Digital Freedom Platform. It can spread by peer-to-peer when we got a big thing coming up. But if you want to have a continuing dialogue, it's still frustrating. And like you said, it's the equivalent of book burning. I wish there were more people in the streets throwing their hands up and demanding solutions. It's good to see, Congress pulling in these CEOs and trying to put them on the hot seat and get them to explain their behavior. At least that's a start. I had a conversation in here with a member of the House of Lords a week ago, and he spoke openly about holding these digital companies to task, potentially breaking them up, and potentially demanding digital freedom of speech. We're almost at 250,000 signatures for our open letter. So I see some progress. I really do, but I'm still very frustrated with these social media companies and the fact we can't get a real message out there. So I'm frustrated.
Well, I think part of that's not just the social media, it's also mainstream media and how they're censoring. And then the social media ends up being like the secondary afterthought. Because, for example, Google having the lawsuit filed by the US government, the antitrust lawsuit that was filed last Monday, you don't see anything about that in mainstream media at all. And so one thing that I've heard the average person say, I remember even my mom saying that, even my mom saying this before she passed in 2016, her response was always be like, well, if that was true, then I'd hear about it in the news. Or if that was true, my doctor would be talking about it. Or if that was, if that was true, they expect it to be on mainstream news.
Yeah.
And by not having it in mainstream news and having it on YouTube or on one of our own live feeds, whatever that case may, whatever venue that we have, it gives the impression to the average person, oh, well, this information is just what they refer to as conspiracy theory. Oh, that's just a loon, or that's just crazy, or that's just somebody that, is trying to get their message across. And that's okay for us to be labeled that way. I'm not complaining about us being labeled that way. What it does, though, is it prevents the truth from being disseminated. Because as you said, they minimize, or they try to invalidate the truth with ridicule. So there's the three phases of truth, right? The first is ridicule. Second is violent opposition. And the third is accepting it as always having been known as the facts. And I've actually experienced this on two separate occasions way before COVID, where I came out and I said something. The first time was about the relationship between insulin-like growth factor and cancer, growth hormone and cancer. And I, just a short little background on this, I spoke at a conference and at an A4M conference in, I think it was in 1999 or 2000. And it was in 2000, it was in 1999 actually. And I got the worst reviews for CME purposes, continuing medical education reviews. There was, I think, 1,700 doctors that were in the conference. I had like 35 that attended my lecture. I was, my reviews on my CME review forms were like an embarrassment to medicine, shouldn't be allowed to, practice medicine, doesn't know what he's talking about. There was one out of the 34 people that said interesting, and that was it. Then the following year, I give a lecture again, and I don't even know how I got invited back because of the first performance being so bad, supposedly. But I was sponsored by a pharmacy, and they wanted me. They were a big corporate sponsor, so they put me back on the stage. And I gave a lecture, and this lecture resulted, they had 1,800 or 1,900 doctors at that conference. They had a guy that's standing at the exit clicking with a little clicker to see how many people are coming in, because fire code was that they couldn't have more than like 1,950 people in there. They had over 2,100 people that attended that lecture. I got the highest CME evaluations that they'd ever had. I got a standing ovation. The chief of plastic surgery from Mayo Clinic stood up and said I was ahead of my time. A hand surgeon from Yale University stood up and said that I was a genius. I mean, all sorts of accolades. Now, this is 1 year difference, okay? 1999 and then 2000, December 2000. Do you know what the difference in my two lectures was? Just take a wild guess.
Nothing.
One slide that I had added to the second lecture, and it was a reference to a study that was published in September 20th, 2000 in the Journal of the National Cancer Institute that said exactly what I had said the year earlier. And now all of a sudden I go from an embarrassment to medicine to being a genius and being ahead of my time. So I've realized that this first thing of the ridicule and then violent opposition and then accepting it as always having been known the truth, this is a part and parcel of how society operates. And so people like you and I and many others like us that have stood up and stated whatever we've stated, voiced our truth, we may be burned on the cross today, but they'll remember our names in the future as being the ones that made the difference. I don't do it because, of that. And I know you don't do it, but you don't do what you do. And I don't do what I do because so that we can be remembered in the future. My motivation is my kids. I think your motivation is probably your kids, and the motivation to just do the right thing, because that's what is sustainable. That's what allows us to do what we do and to feel good about what we do and be, people always ask, what's your secret? What's your drive? Well, when you're doing something that makes a difference, I mean, you're impacting people's lives, there's nothing that can hold you back. It's like and from quantum physics, it would be defined as 0 point, right? It's the maximum output with minimal expenditure of energy. You're like the Energizer Bunny. There's no depletion because you're on a mission that's much higher than yourself. You're in alignment with whatever your life purpose is. So I don't want to get too metaphysical here, but you understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It can't necessarily put into words, and words wouldn't even justify it. The point is that we're doing something that is going to make a difference, and we recognize it and we realize that. And from that standpoint, that's what feeds us. And I'm appreciative and grateful for having that opportunity to be able to have had a voice. And I don't even know how I got that platform, but it just kind of happened. So I guess there are things that we don't understand or why they happen, but they end up happening. And we just have to ride the wave and enjoy it. And this is a great time to be alive, Brian. I mean, I don't know if you agree with me, but this is truly, despite all the wrong things that are happening, and the idiocy that's happening, it's an incredible time to be alive, because history will remember this point as a critical turning point in mankind's existence on this planet.
When you're speaking your truth, it feels like you have all this energy.
I believe that when you are living your purpose and you're in alignment with the reason that we were all sent here, and again, it varies in people's belief systems, depending on what a person believes. Some people don't believe that they were sent here for any reason or that everything's random. When you start to understand how the body works and you start to see how science works, you realize there's nothing random. Everything is actually very, very organized. Even the chaos theory actually talks about how even within that chaos, everything is very organized and structured. And so I believe, and my experience has been at least, that when you are in that alignment, you're approaching what in quantum physics is referred to as 0 point. And 0 point is essentially defined, this isn't the full definition, but the essence of the definition is maximum output, or the ability to put out maximum output with minimal expenditure of energy. So from the aspect of a car, for example, you can think of a car that runs forever and doesn't need any gasoline. That would be the ultimate in 0 point. So if we can achieve 0 point in our physical health, for example, that means that you don't have any residual effects from having lived improperly. You don't have any disease process. You have no toxicity, or the body is at the point of eliminating as much toxicity as possible and functioning at a level that is as optimum as possible. That would be approaching 0 point. 0 point would be essentially living forever with no need for any sustenance, any water, any food, et cetera, et cetera. So if we're approaching 0 point, that means we're becoming more efficient. And I believe that when you are living in your purpose, you're becoming more efficient. And that's how the universe rewards it, by making life easier. It's almost like, hitting that wall when you're running, when you hit that point that it's just effortless, you don't feel anything, you feel like you're floating. It's that type of thing. And I don't think, maybe other people listening may not understand what I'm talking about. I don't think that this is a foreign concept to you, Brian. I have a feeling that you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, it's funny. And I think we've all felt that at different points in our life. But for me, the last 6 months, I've felt that as well. It's almost like I wake up every day with a higher purpose. It's super energizing. I don't need to take time off. As a matter of fact, weirdly, vacations feel like I'm not focusing on why I was put on this planet. And when you're really living in true alignment, speaking the truth that's more powerful than you, more powerful than your ego and your legacy, it's almost like something else takes over and energizes you. And for me, I mean, I'm turning 50 next year, and I feel like the last 6 months of my life maybe was the reason for my whole life to a certain extent, and the years that are to come. So it's like you really want to make sure it all happens, and in a weird way, it's effortless. So
totally agree.
Yeah, it's a great moment, and I would say for everybody, try to find that thing in your life where you feel that way. Before you made that point, you were saying, about how your mom used to say, well, if it's not on the news, then it might not be real. And I just wanted to address that before we get into some of the things you've been talking about recently. And I think a lot of people still have this really antiquated relationship with the mainstream media, maybe like they do with the medical profession too. And maybe we can talk about that too, where you just assume that their word is bond. You know, you just assume that their job is to report the truth, when the more you dive into it, you realize that couldn't be further from the truth, really.
Well, their job is to report the truth. They just don't perform their job.
They just don't do it. Yeah, they're co-opted by so many strange agendas based on the publication, the history, the politics, the ownership. Whether you, in the new media perspective, like we are here at London Real, are a threat to their business model. And again, if anybody listening to this will say, well, what does that have to do with the truth? Exactly nothing. For 9 years, I waited for a mainstream news media source to report this incredible story called London Real, of this former banker who decided to pack it in and have real conversations with real people that created this amazing movement and 500 million views. Never once was it reported by mainstream media until they had something bad to say about us, where they tried to rip us down. And so, again, if it hadn't happened to me, doctor, I would have said that that's a crazy conspiracy theory. But until it happens to you, then you realize it. So now I look at the news media as a completely different thing than the truth. But a lot of people still don't know that. They still think our government is always doing something in our best interest. They think the mainstream media tells the truth. They think all doctors make decisions that are based on the best science. They think pharmaceutical companies give us the best treatments for us. And unfortunately, it's just not true. And you have to be aware of that. So, yeah.
I think the facade is falling apart now. And I think more and more people realize that. And, you're absolutely right that this illusion that's been created, I think it's been created so that they can control the narrative. And again, not just now, but this has been going on. H1N1, they tried to do the same thing. They talked about 60 million Americans were going to die because of H1N1. This is back in 2010. And of course, 60 million people didn't die. 20% of the American population didn't die. But the reason they didn't die is because people in mass refused to take the H1N1 vaccine. There were 2 Supreme Court cases, one in Washington that went to Washington State and one in New York, where the nursing associations went to the Supreme Court to argue the unconstitutionality of being forced to take a mandatory vaccine. In Germany, there were 98% of the public was supposed to get this for free, and they rioted. They refused to take the H1N1. And I remember Obama talking about that 60 million people were going to die, and he was wrong. 60 million people didn't die, but it wasn't that he was wrong about the number. If people had taken the vaccine, he would have been absolutely correct, but people refused to take it. And so the reason that they never reported all the stuff that you were doing and all the successes you were having with the 500 million views was because they couldn't control you. They couldn't control you. So that's why they didn't want to give any limelight. They had to tear you down. And this comes back to, again, how has the narrative been controlled? And this is something that's been going on for 40, 50, 60 years. I mean, when you start to look at hemp, for example, marijuana, and you start to realize, I grew up thinking that anybody who smoked marijuana was a bad person, that they were a druggie. And, I've never drank or smoked a thing in my life, unless you count cough syrup, which has alcohol in it. But otherwise, I've never partaken in any of those things. So I grew up thinking, even up till maybe 10 years ago, I thought, the marijuana was a bad, evil thing. And then you start seeing the history of how the hemp plant was considered by the forefathers in the United States to be a gift from the heavens, a gift from the gods. It's a faster growing plant, was more versatile, had a greater nutritional profile, had a greater ability to be utilized in all sorts of different industry. And it was the paper industry that didn't want hemp to become the source of paper, because everything up to that point had been done through forestry, through pulp from wood. But because hemp was coming onto the picture and it was growing faster, it gave you better quality paper, they pushed the agenda to demonize hemp, to demonize marijuana, and lobbied in Congress to outlaw it because of the addictive nature or the potential abuse of marijuana. And it was all to do with the paper industry. It was all to make sure that they kept paper in the wood pulp industry, as opposed to allowing it to shift to hemp. You can make hempcrete, which is like a better alternative to concrete. From hemp, you can make clothes out of it, shampoo out of it, medicines out of it, food. It's just amazing what it can be done. But they demonized hemp so that they could control, where the dollars were being spent, i.e., in that particular case, it was with the forest industry, the forestry. I don't even remember what the group of the name of the family was, but it's one of the big families. You know what I'm talking about? About this?
No, I know that whole story, and it's a great analogy to kind of a lot of the things happening today, where there's an agenda, and that can actually keep, you know, a plant and a crop and medicines from not helping people for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And then the stigma still carries on, you know? And again, and we have so many assumptions that we make that just need to be tested and qualified, you know? And the good news is at least there's some media out there. There's more people talking about this. But again, there's that stupidity and ignorance. And there's a real war out there, but it's an information war. It's not like the wars that you were familiar with in the Army. This is an information war. It controls your identity. And you don't even know it's being waged on you sometimes. You don't even know you're fighting it. You don't know when you're a victim. You don't know when your brain's been co-opted. And you got to be extra vigilant. That's for sure these days.
Absolutely. You know? Absolutely. In fact, you know, I want to mention that there's somebody, I can't say who they are, because if I even gave you one statistic on who this person is, the whole world would know who I'm talking about. Let's just say that it's one of the top 5 most well-paid athletes on the planet. Very, very well known. Actually, I didn't know who he was, but everybody in my social circle, from my video editor to my significant other and my staff, everybody was like, they were freaking out. But, you know, just talking with him, and I was talking with him right before I came on to London Real, he made a comment to me. And based upon some of the things that we were talking about, I said to him, I said, you should really seriously consider going public, because he has a massive, massive, I mean, massive following. You know, I don't want to say where he ranks, because if I said it, everybody would know who it is. But he said, his response was,
well, what did you want him to talk about? What did you want him to go public about? Talking about his thoughts about what?
Well, it was actually about the validity of some of the testing and what happened with him particularly. And I don't think the public really knows what's been happening. But the bottom line is, this is something that many, many athletes and many well-known people have gone through. They test positive, they have no symptoms, but because they're being tested positive, and, you know, the media picks up on this, and most of them go hand in hand and talk about, you know, I've been tested positive, and, you know, please stay home and maintain social distancing. But not everybody's like that. There are people that are speaking the truth. And when I mentioned that to him, that he should speak out the truth to his following, he said they would kill me. And he wasn't talking about his following. He was talking about those that control him. And I said that, you know, to me, I thought it was funny because he said that. And, you know, I said, that's true, but, you know, ha ha. And he said, no, you know, basically he was being 100% serious. He wasn't being facetious about it. And the thing was that he even pointed out that there are posts being made on his social media channels. And I was amazed. He said that they're making posts on his social media channels. And I said, you let them do that? And he said, it's not that I'm letting them do it. They can get in there and they do it. And then I have to go in and manually delete the messages. So they're using his, because he's bigger than any of the media channels, right? Any of the mainstream media channels. So collectively, he has that pull. But if he comes out and says something, and honestly, I know what he's saying is the truth, that he would be taken out. They would be a lot of people that are probably, that we think, oh, they've sold out. They may not have sold out, Brian. They may have been either threatened or they've been, you know, they're being controlled because they're holding something over their head, safety of their family. Who knows? I mean, this is conjecture on my part. I'm not talking facts here. I'm just talking about what are the possibilities, because just with this one person, and that my experience is not isolated with this one person. My experience is with a number of people, a half a dozen very well-known people that if I said their names, everybody that would be listening right now would know who these people are. Celebrities, athletes, they know the truth. They can't voice it, because if they voiced it, they are 100% convinced, and I am also, that they would be killed. In fact, I'll tell you something right now.
You really think they would actually be killed? I mean, those are strong words for these famous people. And don't get me wrong, I've been contacted by some equally famous people when we had all our fight with YouTube. And most of them, well, all of them supported us, but not all of them could publicly support us. And the ones that did got vilified in the mainstream media. I mean, we got supported by Dejan Lovren, one of the Premier League football guys. They went on to win the FA Cup for Liverpool, and he got slammed when he posted our stuff from the Digital Freedom Platform in the mainstream media. His manager called him up. The coach said, you can't be doing this. And he said, I'll do whatever I want. But he said, Brian, this is hard for me. And I had tennis champs, Formula One drivers, supermodels, the whole nine. But not all of them could do it because they were feeling repercussions.
Right. So, when you talk about these repercussions, Brian, it's repercussions either financial or, they'll take you off their preferred list.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website, londonreal.tv, or click the link in the description below.
So Jim Rickards has just recorded a video that's not available to anyone in the public, and he's going to be talking about how this upcoming recession is going to be fast, it's going to be bloody, it's going to be nasty. But at the same time, he's going to show you how you can position yourself to profit from all of this chaos. Now, we've made this video only available to our viewers. Go to londonreal.tv/Jim. Watch that immediately. I can't say enough good things about Jim Rickards. He understands the global economic system better than any guest I've ever had on London Real. His predictions are almost uncannily true, and you can learn how to profit from his vision, from his expertise, and his understanding of economics. So go to londonreal.tv/Jim or click the link below. It's an excellent, excellent look on what's going to happen in the future and how you can position yourself to profit from that. Jim is one of the best in the business, one of my favorite guests on London Real. And he's very, very good at predicting the future and showing us all to profit from it. So click the link, and I hope you enjoy.
The greedy bankers are about to do it again. In 2008, they crashed our financial system and nearly bankrupted the entire global economy. Then they received trillions of dollars in government bailouts. And after, they demanded fat bonuses paid for by you, the taxpayer.
It turns out the banks haven't just been screwing the American taxpayers, they're also screwing over their investors. Turns out the banking industry is the worst place you could put your money, despite enormous taxpayer bailouts.
Now the bankers are back to take away your financial freedom. They lie and tell you that cryptocurrency isn't safe. They try to make it illegal for you to choose how to invest your hard-earned money. They lie and say cryptocurrency is used by money launderers and criminals. But look at the record. It's the banks themselves that launder hundreds of billions of dollars every year to the biggest criminal operations in the world.
Leaked documents have revealed how some UK banks have helped criminals, money launderers and Russians under sanctions.
American authorities discovered that the Sinaloa cartel moved $881 million through HSBC accounts as bank officials turned a blind eye to the illegality.
The bankers lie and say cryptocurrency is not a real investment. Meanwhile, the smartest CEOs in the world are buying billions and billions of it. The truth is that banks lie about cryptocurrency because it makes them scared. The banks take $9 trillion per year of your hard-earned money, and they are worried that they will finally be exposed. They're scared because crypto means they can no longer control your money, which means they can no longer control you. They are scared because you might actually understand your money and intelligently decide what to do with it. Now is the time for us to come together, fight back, and take control. It's time to educate ourselves, our families, and our communities. Because financial education means financial freedom. We know that cryptocurrencies will help us build the new decentralized financial system of the future. A banking system that is of the people, by the people, and for the people. A banking system where access to finance is a fundamental human right. A banking system that is free and fair and welcomes all humans on this earth. The DeFi revolution is happening. We, the people, can no longer be fooled. We choose to take control of our finances, we choose to take control of our freedom. We choose to take control of our future. Join us, and let's take back our financial freedom forever.